Chapter 0 The story within the novel. Kim Se-ho, 27 years old. A righteous, honest, and hard-working man from a commoner background. He possesses extraordinary character and talent and is a well-known genius from the military academy. He carries a strong sense of justice befitting a hero, but harbors a special secret. Shin Jong-hyuk, 27 years old. The fourth-generation heir to Jinsung Corp., a chaebol that contends for the #1 spot. He is narcissistic and elitist as the spoiled child of a chaebol family and later becomes a villain because of his inferiority complex towards Kim Se-ho. I have to be the best. I can't tolerate anyone above me. He confronts Kim Se-ho with such stubbornness. Those two were the main characters of my novel. The novel had many more characters, but writing them all down was impossible. It contained billions of characters, and unless they had important roles like the heroine or sidekick, giving them a name was unnecessary. Why was I saying all this? Hero Association's Military Agent Academy, Seoul Branch, Class of 2024, Rank 1 Cadet, Kim Se-ho. Quote, the story in my novel was happening in front of my eyes. Kim Se-ho nervously walked up as he was called to the stage. We were in a huge auditorium filled with 3,000 cadets and thousands of more spectators. Their gazes all focused on Kim Se-ho. He's Kim Se-ho. Wow. Quote, he's so handsome. Several girls swooned at the sight of him. This is why they say your gift is the only thing that matters. Who cares if you work hard? People like him always take first place. Quote, that guy completely lucked out with his gift. Quote, naturally, every young teenager envied him. They say he's got the best grades in the last 10 years. Quote, yeah, I've heard of him. They announced his gift too, right? What was it again? Sword Saint. Guild associates eagerly watched the best cadet in recent history from the highest seats. They had to be at least a kilometer away, but I could clearly hear them as long as I looked in their direction. Not only their words, but I could even see their faces, almost as if I was right in front of them. Perhaps this was my gift. Yeah, they said he receives the world's protection in regards to swords. Quote, that's pretty vague, but information from the academy is always like that. Quote, we called dibs on that kid, so don't touch him. Quote, I recognized one of the whisperers. Yun Sung-ah, an important assistant to the main character and one of the heroines who almost becomes his lover. Just when the two of them were hitting it off, actually, the main character was hitting it off with multiple heroines, I suspended my novel. Thus, the two never became lovers. Dibs. What dibs? There's no such thing when it comes to cadets. Quote, Yun Sung-ah smiled and rebutted another guild associate's provocation. Is that why Essence of the Straight can't escape second place? I knew Yun Sung-ah's face. Surprisingly, she looked like my first love from college. Probably because I imagined her when I created Yun Sung-ah. Can I take that as a challenge? I'm kidding, of course. We still have 3 years before we can scout any of them. Quote, 2 years. Quote, you know scouting them before they graduate is illegal, right? That's only if you get caught. Quote, Yun Sung-ah and the man glared at each other. The VIP section began to heat up from their staring contest. And so, the fight for Kim Se-ho began. Class of 2024, Rank 2 Cadet, Shin Jong-hyuk. Quote, meanwhile, the other main character stood up too. The heir to the Jinsung clan commanded the audience's attention just like Kim Se-ho. But unlike Kim Se-ho, there was no envy towards him, only admiration and adoration. With Kim Se-ho they thought, how is he better than me? But with Shin Jong-hyuk it was, he was better than me from birth. Like a true noble, Shin Jong-hyuk confidently ascended the stage. Kim Se-ho and Shin Jong-hyuk stood side by side and glared at each other. Electricity seemed to crackle between them. Without a doubt, they were characters from my novel. Then where was I? I wasn't on stage, but in the farthest back seat of the auditorium. I wasn't anyone special out of the 3,000 cadets, but merely one of the many thousands. No guild associates would bother to look my way. Chundong, what rank are you? I'm 2900. Quote, a chubby boy next to me asked. His name tag read, Kim Ho-sup. This meant he would eventually play a role. Although he couldn't be a hero because of his non-existent physical abilities, his gift was outstanding for gathering information. Chundong. I don't know. Quote, I didn't know who I was. I didn't even know my name was Chundong. Shouldn't I have been one of the two on stage? Hey, come on, if you don't know that. I don't know. Quote, once again, I didn't know. This world was the novel I wrote, but I was in the body of a character I had never written. Other than being a cadet in the Military Agent Academy, I was the most ordinary and connectionless character whose name didn't even exist in the novel. In other words, I was an extra. 2. No, I was a speck of dust. 1. A chaebol is a powerful conglomerate in South Korea usually run by a single family. 2. In English, an extra usually refers to a background actor, performer, cast, etc. Chapter 1 Cube 1. One day, I received an email. The sender asked if he could remake my novel. I was dumbfounded at the time. I might have been on a short hiatus, but to ask to remake a novel in paid serialization, of course I refused. In fact, I didn't reply at all. Partly because that would go against copyright laws and also because I felt ashamed. My web novel was called The Returnee Hero. It wasn't sensational, but fairly popular and my best hit in 5 years. I had been on hiatus for 3 months when I received the email. The reason was simple. The words wouldn't come. At first, I poured my passion into writing. My description of the world was almost 50,000 Korean characters, and I poured my heart into each chapter. However, I fell into an awful slump after a year, even though the novel continued for 6 more months until the story reached its mid-late stage. It was full of plot holes because I forcefully wrote and the characters' personalities all collapsed. Unsurprisingly, the number of readers significantly dropped. I was too afraid to even read the comments by then and ultimately went on hiatus. However, I couldn't continue a single sentence no matter how long I rested. Then I received another email to remake my novel as I wallowed in misery from my lack of writing skills. From Homo sapiens at neighbor. Com, please. This is only for my personal satisfaction. I won't reveal the remake to anyone. It'll only be between me and you. Who knows, maybe you'll find some inspiration to continue the story. It was a fairly long, but simple email. He wanted to remake my novel for his own gratification. How much did he like my novel to send an email like this? I agreed since I wasn't particularly proud of my work, feeling somewhat thankful and ashamed. Was that the cause of this situation? The chance of winning the lottery was 1 in 8,145,060. What was happening to me had to be 1 in 7 billion. I found myself in an ordinary home, but it wasn't my world and I wasn't me. That might have sounded philosophical, but it wasn't. That was literally the case. I had become an extra in my novel. An extra I didn't remember creating. Kim Chundong. Chundong lived in an ordinary apartment, but he didn't have any parents or relatives. Of course, I didn't know why. At 9 years old, Chundong was admitted to the Military Agent Academy, a place that trained elites to fight against monsters and djinns, but what abilities did Chundong even possess to pass the entrance exam? I had no clue. I didn't know anything else about him. I didn't even know how he looked. Not even joking. I didn't. When I looked in the mirror. Opening parenthesis question mark closing parenthesis. That's all I saw. An oval with a question mark. I found this crazy body possession transmigration completely unreasonable. I went to bed like usual, but found myself on the last day of the semester at Military Agent Academy when I woke up. I had 2 suspicions. First was that I was being pranked, but then I quickly ruled that out. I couldn't even bother to explain why. Second was that I was still dreaming, but I naturally dismissed that because the thought of being in a dream would never occur to the dreamer. More importantly, no dream would continue for 2 weeks with such clarity. I spent the past 2 weeks pondering whether the world inside the novel should be treated as my new reality. Ding ding. I laid in bed and blankly stared at the ceiling until my smartphone rang. I glanced over and saw that it was time to go to school. Why the hell do I need to go to school? The Military Agent Academy held its graduation 13 days ago, but that graduating class only consisted of non-combatant cadets. Non-combatant cadets couldn't be called heroes. Combat class cadets had to attend school for 3 more years. These 3 years would be spent at Cube, the Hero Academy. Unfortunately, this damned Chundong guy was a combat cadet. Again, I had no clue who he was. Ah, how frustrating. Quote, I barely did anything the past 2 weeks. I spent most of my time on the internet, ate food when I got hungry, went online to search for a solution, laughed at the surprisingly funny variety shows on TV, ate some more food. Anyways, the only noteworthy event was going to Seoul 2 days ago for the 3-hour-long Cube entrance ceremony. I didn't want to go, but I had no choice since I would be expelled if I didn't attend. I do think I need to go, but I couldn't figure out who put me here, for what reason, and with what power. I reluctantly accepted my fate after living idly for 2 weeks. It seemed I would live like this for a while, so I might as well make a living. In my novel, being a hero was everyone's dream job. Things would become dangerous midway because of villains, but the hiatus would be close. I just needed to survive until then. I was sure I'd figure something out when the time came. 7:33 a.m. School would begin in 57 minutes. I got up and trudged to the bathroom. The question mark greeted me in the mirror. Screw this question mark. Is it ever going to go away? My face was literally a question mark and I didn't know why. It wasn't because I didn't describe this face. If that were the case, billions of other people in this world wouldn't have faces. So why was only Chundong's face a question mark? I don't get it. Quote, I washed my face after murmuring begrudgingly. I could feel my skin and hair, which made everything even creepier. After washing up, I changed into the Cube uniform I received at the entrance ceremony. Other than that, I had no other luggage. Anyone who saw this uniform would undoubtedly envy me, but I had no idea what I was doing. My face was a freaking question mark. How was I supposed to figure anything out? As I opened the door, I glanced back at my home for the past 2 weeks, the apartment I barely found thanks to the address on my cadet card. It seemed I got attached in this short period and I felt like I would miss it. Cube floated on an island in the middle of the East Sea. Once I left, I probably wouldn't come back. Ha. Quote, I left the comfortable apartment and stepped into a dark and unfamiliar world. Chapter 2 Cube 2. Cube was the world's greatest training institute that boasted state-of-the-art magic, science, and engineering. It was located in the East Sea on a huge artificial island twice the size of Yoido. This huge area contained 5,000 hero cadets, of which 1,300 were first years. Although 2,000 non-combatants graduated 2 weeks ago, elite cadets from all over the world would replace them and further increase the competition. In a sense, this place could be considered too harsh to be a proper home for 17 to 19-year-olds. Starting from the second year, magicians who wanted to become heroes would also transfer from the National Magic University, adding another 200 to 300 cadets. Furthermore, Cube also included training instructors, cafeteria ladies, store workers, cleaners, recruiters, government associates, engineers, security, doctors, and researchers who all took care of the cadets. All these individuals added up to a total population of around 50,000. Naturally, investors highly regarded this place. Korea was a world power rivaling the United States according to my novel's setting. I listed several reasons, but the most obvious one was that I was Korean. Chundong could be considered an elite as a Cube cadet. His destiny should be detached from the main storyline since I didn't write any story for him. He wouldn't have to live the burdening life of a main character and would probably live a carefree life. I wanted that kind of life too. I sighed in front of the classroom door. Novice, Veritas. Novice referred to first-year cadets, while Veritas was our class name. Simply put, I was in Year 1 Class 1. I knew that Shin Jong-hyuk and Kim So-ho were also in the same class. Cliques would form around them and Shin Jong-hyuk would instigate many schemes that turned the class into a mess. Most likely, I would get swept up regardless of my will. Hoo. Quote, I carefully opened the door after collecting my breath. The interior looked sleek and clean. White with no sign of dust and 3 long desks cascading up. Where should I sit? I looked around and found Shin Jong-hyuk in the farthest back seat. He seemed imposing with his closed eyes and hands in his pockets. His childhood friend, Yoo Yana, chattered next to him. The two of them didn't pay any attention to me. Thank God. I sat at the edge of the middle row. I looked straight ahead like a proper extra. A screen projected holograms instead of a chalkboard. I couldn't help but sigh as I looked at it. I couldn't believe I was back in school after having already done my mandatory military service. There couldn't be a worse calamity. Yaon. Quote, Cube's semester began in February. It was cold outside and the warm room made me sleepy. Currently, it was 8 a.m. and class would begin at 8:30. Honestly, I didn't plan to arrive this early. Traveling from Seoul to Cube took less time than I thought with a portal, and I also expected to get lost. Fortunately, something called the Cube bus ran every 10 minutes around campus, which didn't exist in my original setting. Now that I think about it, it was an oversight to always have the main character walk around the huge campus. Since the novel became real, it seemed to be fixing plot holes on its own. Anyways, let's sleep a little. I don't want to think anymore. I closed my eyes and dropped my head on the desk. Now, a thunderous shout woke me up. The instructor stood behind the podium when I opened my eyes. Today's the first day, so there won't be any special training. But I hope all of you did your morning training. You can never go wrong with training in the morning when mana is most dense. Quote, morning training. Oh, right. There was something like that. A training ground opened up from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. I stuffed it into the story so the leading characters could meet. Now, let's start with self-introductions. I'm Kim So-hyuk, the instructor in charge of all of you for the year. Quote, I vaguely recalled his name. My national rank is 3,850. World rank 9,737. By the association's classification, I am a high intermediate rank, grade 5 hero. Quote, the student's eyes lit up. That was understandable. Only around 2 million heroes existed in the world, so rank 9,737 meant he was quite skilled. That's enough for my introduction. Quote, Kim So-hyuk grinned at the students' reactions. The first day always feels special. You might not have slept due to excitement and worry, or maybe you're already looking forward to improving yourselves. Hey, maybe you're just happy to see your crush again. Quote, the cadets broke out into small laughter, but the instructor kept a stern expression. Cube isn't the same as before. I promise you will have no time for relationships. In Cube, you will experience real combat scenarios. Look forward to experiencing true fear. Quote, his mischievous smile sent a chill down my back. Combat training, I had to take part in that too. Cube is objective. The only indicator of success will be your grade. That'll be the only thing that guilds look at, so we will grade you accurately and strictly. You will be held back if you underperform. Statistically, less than half of Cube cadets graduate without repeating a semester. Even then, you can only be held back up to 2 years. Any more than that and you will be expelled. If you can't become a hero, you can become an agent or a mercenary. I take it that's not what you want. Quote, the instructor scanned the students' faces after giving them a scare. I see a few familiar faces. Quote, I did too. Kim So-ho, Shin Jong-hyuk, Yoo Yana, Chai Nyan, Rachel, and Yi Young-han. These 6 were the important characters I spotted. Shin Jong-hyuk sat with Yoo Yana. Kim Seho and Chai Nyan sat apart since they considered each other rivals. Princess Rachel sat alone while Yi Younghan sat behind Kim Seho. I repeat. At Cube, you will confirm what you've learned until now and hone your skills in battle. There will be no easy training here. Remember that. Quote, with that, Kim Soo-hyuk announced the day's activity. Prepare yourselves. Our schedule today won't take long. The first task is to select your main weapon. Quote, any weapon you can think of should be here. Quote, a main weapon was exactly what it sounded like. High-ranking heroes used treasured weapons, while those above the unique grade were called armaments. I had no idea what weapon to choose since I knew nothing about Chundong. Stand in front of your chosen weapon. We'll supply you with the training weapons, but don't underestimate them. Their market prices go for 5 million won each. Quote, there were all sorts of weapons, more than I could have ever imagined. Sword, spear, saber, dagger, rapier, halberd, greatsword, zweihander, bow, gun, whip, gauntlet, etc. The 100 students of Veritas each stood in front of their chosen weapon. Choose carefully. You won't be able to switch for at least 6 months once you pick your main weapon. Quote, swords and spears were the most popular. Kim Seho and Shin Jong-hyuk stood in front of a sword and a spear respectively. 70% chose one of the so-called holy trinity of weapons, the sword, the spear, and the saber. On the other hand, Yu Yana chose the whip, Chai Nyan chose the bow, and Rachel chose the rapier. However, I simply stood there. Kim Chundong, what are you standing still for? Kim Soo-hyuk asked. I stared blankly at the one weapon no one paid attention to. The weapon of choice in the modern world, one that didn't require an instruction manual and anyone could use with a click. However, every hero avoided this weapon and considered it a useless lump of metal. Most likely, it was only here for the sake of having every weapon. This was my only choice. I couldn't use any close-ranged weapons. Even if Chundong had talent, I didn't want to participate where blood splattered everywhere. Kim Chundong. Quote, the instructor's voice deepened as all the other students looked at me, including Shin Jong-hyuk and Kim Seho. I didn't like being the center of attention, so I quickly walked up and grabbed the weapon. I could feel the metal weight in my hand as the smell of rust tickled my nose. More eyes continued to stare. I had chosen a handgun. 1. Yoido is a large island in Seoul, 4 square kilometers in size and home to 31,000 people.